There are moments in history so disturbing that the societies behind them tried to bury the truth. Tonight, we uncover 5 of them. They built one of the most powerful empires in history. They advanced science, medicine, and industry. They created a world that still shapes ours today. And yet, behind all that progress was something far darker. The Victorian era, 1837 to 1901. Often remembered as a golden age, but beneath its elegance were secrets that still feel deeply unsettling. Secret number 1. The dead were made to look alive. Before photography became common, most people lived and died without ever having their picture taken. So when someone passed away, families made a decision. To remember them, they would take a photograph after death. Bodies were carefully prepared, dressed in their best clothes, hair combed neatly. Sometimes, their eyes were even positioned to appear open. In many cases, families stood beside them, as if nothing had happened, as if the person was simply resting. Children were photographed most often. Because so many children didn't survive, illness was everywhere, and death was a constant part of life. To them, this wasn't disturbing. It was love, a final memory, the only one they would ever have. But in some cases, the truth becomes even darker. There are reports that some families, unable to afford photography while their loved ones were alive, would dig them up after burial and take the photograph then. And even today, historians still debate certain images. Looking closely, trying to answer a single question: is this person alive or already gone? Because what comes next is even more disturbing. Secret number 2. People were being buried alive. In the Victorian era, medicine wasn't advanced enough to always confirm death. There were no modern machines, no reliable way to be certain. People could fall into deep unconscious states and be mistaken for dead, and sometimes they woke up underground. Stories spread. Scratching sounds inside coffins, faint screams beneath the soil, desperate attempts to escape. It happened often enough that it created widespread fear, a fear with a name: premature burial. So they invented a solution: the safety coffin. A string was tied to the person's hand. It ran up through the earth and connected to a bell above the grave. If they woke up, they could ring it. Someone would hear and rescue them. But here's the part no one talks about. How many bells rang with no one there to hear them? How many people woke up in complete darkness and tried to call for help until they couldn't anymore? There are no confirmed records of anyone being saved this way, which means either the fear was exaggerated or the bells rang and no one came. And if that wasn't disturbing enough, what happened next was even worse.
Secret number 3. Bodies were being sold. In the early 1800s, medical schools needed human bodies for research, for teaching, for understanding anatomy. But there weren't enough. So a black market emerged. People began digging up freshly buried corpses, stealing them, selling them. And then it got worse. 2 men decided digging wasn't necessary. They ran a lodging house. And when certain guests became inconvenient, they killed them. Not violently, not visibly, but in a way that left the body intact. Then they sold those bodies to a respected doctor. He never asked questions. He just paid. This continued again and again until the truth finally came out. By then, multiple lives had been taken, and the system that allowed it had already normalized something unthinkable. But even that was not the darkest part of this era, because what people did to the living and the dead goes even deeper.
Secret number 4. Women were locked away. Not for crimes, not for violence, but for behavior. In the Victorian era, There was a diagnosis for women who didn't follow expectations. They called it moral insanity. The symptoms? Being too emotional, speaking too freely, refusing to obey, disagreeing with a husband. Any of these could be enough. A single signature from a husband, a father, or a doctor, and a woman could be taken away. No trial, no evidence, no explanation. Some were removed from their homes at night, confused, frightened, with no idea what they had done wrong. And once inside, their voices stopped mattering. They could say they were sane. They could beg to leave. They could scream the truth. But no one listened. Because once you were labeled insane, everything you said became proof that you were. Some women spent years inside. Some spent decades. Not because they were ill, but because they were inconvenient. And the world outside continued, as if nothing had happened. But even that was not the most disturbing part. Because what they did with the dead was something even stranger. Secret number 5. The dead became art. In a world where death was everywhere, people found ways to hold on to those they lost. And one of the most unusual ways was through hair. When someone died, a lock of their hair would be cut, carefully kept, and then transformed. Woven into jewelry, shaped into intricate designs, turned into wreaths, and displayed in homes. These pieces weren't hidden, they were proudly shown, a way to keep a part of someone long after they were gone. Sometimes multiple people's hair would be combined into one piece, a family, preserved in strands. To them, this wasn't disturbing. It was remembrance. It was love. But looking back, it feels different, because these objects still exist, in antique shops, in collections, in quiet corners of homes. Objects made from people who have been gone for generations, people whose names are forgotten, whose stories are lost, but whose presence still remains. 5 secrets, 5 glimpses into a world that looked refined on the surface, but hid something far darker underneath. Because history isn't always what we're told. Sometimes the truth is buried, and sometimes it's waiting to be uncovered. Which one stayed with you?